When I was young, I knew I knew I was gay. I knew what I was from a very young age because it was a natural feeling that I had for men. Um, it was definitely something that I felt more natural to. I felt more love for a man than I actually did a girl. When people used to try to force me to like girls and everything like that, it felt nasty. It felt unnatural for me. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel like it was me. It felt as though that I was forced into doing it. And when that happened, it made me just feel, it just made me feel less as a person. Like I didn't have no say so over life. I didn't have no, like I was just an evil, dirty person, you know. And when people used to try to say what was masculine and this is too feminine or that was too masculine, it was just like I was totally the opposite of what their standards was when it came to masculinity. I was more into beauty or whatever it is that they call masculine. I was more into the opposite, like getting dressed. I wasn't really into sports like that. I was more into, fashion and modeling and music and everything like that. I was more into those things, or being a pretty boy. I was more that, and society was just like, no, like that's not a boy. That's not what boys do. And I was just like, okay, well, hey, I am who I am. I'm just gonna continue to keep going. When I was 8 or 9, when I entered the house that was God's house, my experience with the church was very cold. It was very, very judgmental. It was very just like I'm stepping into another judgment zone, a war zone, uh, a guard, like, like an actual boxing field. Like I had to always have my guard up. And when that happened, it was I didn't want nothing to do with God. I didn't want nothing to do with God's people. I didn't want nothing to do with any any of the word of God. I didn't want nothing of that. And I knew bits and pieces. I had common sense on what was right and what was wrong. And when I seen certain things that was going on inside just inside society and inside the church, far as, people stepping out on their wives, or wives stepping out on their husbands, or kids having children out of wedlock, a thief, like a thief stealing from somebody that, that the only thing they had to do was ask for. Um, I looked at that and there was always a justification for specific sins. But when it came to my lifestyle, when it came to my life, it was he got a demon. He's very evil. He's from the devil. He has no God in him. Like the God don't love him. If anything, it was always so quick to throw the throw the judgment, the hell, the place of hell on that actual on me. And as I got like into the word a little bit, I started to notice that, okay, well, why is there no justification for me? Why is there no like why? Like I didn't ask to be this way. I didn't raise my hand and say like, hey, I want to be gay. No, I never did. I didn't. You know, and when I look back and looking at how pastors, they always had a justification for a specific sin, I just could never understand, to where it was just like, yo, like it was always favoritism. It was always a double edge, it was like a double standard, to where it was always when somebody had a child out of wedlock, it was, oh, it's a gift from above. God bless y'all with a child, so y'all just need to get it together. That's all y'all got to do. Whenever somebody was stealing, it was like, oh, well, this person had, a specific need that needed to be met, so I understand why they did what they did. When a person stepped out of their marriage, it was, oh, well, we understand they just wasn't happy anymore. So it was just like, I wish that I would have got that same kind of grace when it came to, the church and society. as a whole, especially if we're supposed to be walking as people of God. You know, we're supposed to be serving a God that forgives and everything like that. And I did not experience that. It was just straight condemnation, and I wanted nothing to do with God's people, with God, nothing, nothing at all. When I was in the world, I was in the world. I was having fun. When you a model, when you in fashion, you pretty much don't have a problem about pulling people. I was I was living the life. You had the money, you had the whole, just the excitement. It was just the excitement. And there was a point in time where dating started getting more serious, and I fell for somebody. And we were talking about marriage. We were, getting close to that step to where engagement started to happen. And when that happened, my relationship with God was starting to bubble. And when it started to bubble, it was like, okay, I'm dibbling and dabbling in the word a little bit. And the reason why I started dibbling and dabbling in the word a little bit was from this lady named Medell Breedlove, who I love dearly. She was always at the job talking about, the word of God this, the word of God of that. Jesus, like you gotta sit there and go. I'm like, girl, listen, I ain't doing that. Jesus taught too much. I can't. I got ADHD, baby. I ain't got time to be sitting there reading no Bible, and I fall asleep every single time that I just fall asleep. So, so she gave me the actual NLT version, like the actual different versions so I can understand it and everything like that, the quick version. And as I slowly started to read, I slowly started to feel a gravitation away from my partner. And as I started to continue to keep going and going and going deeper into the Word of God, I hit a point where it was Jeremiah verse 1 through 5. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, I ordained thee, I sanctified thee. So I said, oh, okay, you know, God knew about me before anything was created. He knew all about me. There was never a surprise. So the things that kind of drove me away from God, or the things that always left me in question about God, he already knew. And when it came to a point where it was, starting to dig deeper and still having those questions, it was like, well, God, how do I move forward, with me being who I am? And I remember reading First Corinthians 6, verse 9. And oh my gosh, let me sit there and tell you this. It was talking about my lifestyle, about pretty much not me. It was pretty much what I was engaging in what I was indulging in. And I remember I was so angry with God. I was so angry with God. I was like, oh my gosh. Paul, I wanted my round with Paul. All right. I was a fighter. And I was living in the flesh when I was reading that part, but I was kind of, wrestling with it, because it was just like, well, God, like, what now? Like, what you gonna do with me next? And I had to sit there and be like, God, well, I'm not for marriage. I can't marry no woman or anything like that. And I remember asking God the question, like, who gave Paul the right to speak and everything like that. And it was funny because the voice of God came back, was like, I give Paul the right to speak the same way I give you the right to speak. And I'm like, oh, okay, like, all right, okay. And I sat there like a kid, like, I was angry, like, man, I don't want to pay attention to you no more. And as I continued to keep growing and going and going, it was still like a gravitational pull, like, Devon, come on, like, you got this far, you can't stop right here. And it was always just, all right, we made it this far, let's really see where it's going. And I felt the pull. And it kind of hurt my heart when I had to sit there and let go of my partner. It hurt my heart, because I loved him, and I still do. I always will. And I'm never going to sit there and say that I would never love anybody, that I ever fell out of love with anybody, but it was just that surrenderance of God that I can sit there and say I'm thankful for today, or where I'm at now, so I can show people that are like me that it's possible. It's difficult, but it is possible. I was on the path of darkness, but God snatched me out and brought me into his marvelous light.
Where I was going to marry a man, I am now walking the aisle as a beautiful bride of Christ. Living in submission, peace, and celibacy, I am a vessel that is honorable, keeping the full commandments of Christ. I am a living testament that though this walk will never be easy, it can be done with God's help.